and you get that kind of it's actually really, really rewarding. You don't want a fluffy gearbox that's light and sugary and liquidy and just kind of go blah, 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 blah. Well, that bend, car just goes around flat. Might have been I've got into a bend too fast, panic, and hold on for grim life. The car just goes woof, right round it without any dramas. I go, oh, right, yeah, I forgot. This Integrale is much better than I am. Well, it suddenly dawned on me that I currently have two fabulous cars, both worth around the same price. This video is about comparing these two cars. Where is your £80,000 better spent on these two quite remarkably and godlike handling vehicles? Now, they couldn't be more different. One's a 5-door hatchback with huge rallying history and great kudos, and the other one's a new kid on the block, albeit one of the prettiest cars ever made, in my humble opinion. So where does your money go? This video will talk about the comparison between the two, the driving experience, what they're like outside aesthetically, each different car's kudos and egotistic levels, plus the full interior walk around or sit around. So you can make your own mind up with this content, hopefully. Remember to like and subscribe and drop a note if you've got any question on these two quite remarkable cars. I'll probably have to sell one or both of these to pursue my plans, as you might have seen in my 25 dream cars video that I wish to buy. So without further ado, let's move on to a walk around the cars. So here we are outside with the cars, two completely different ways of doing a red. Obviously the Emira has a deep metallic red originally. This has got a satin stealth PPF all over, which really accentuates the curves and the shadows across the car. It's wonderful, and people who see it in the flesh are amazed how good it looks. I mean, notwithstanding, this car is absolutely filthy. I've been using it in anger in all weathers, quite rightly, and it's bloody enjoyable. Whereas the Integrale, well, I keep it super clean. I just don't go out in the wet in it, so it's always looked after. As you can see, it's, oh my god, what a beautiful car. I mean, there's very few cars that can compete with the majesty of this, but look how small that Integrale looks. I mean, it's not a narrow car, it's got extensions to the side with the wheel arches, but overall it looks quite small, doesn't it? Especially compared to the Bentley, whereas the Lotus has that extra presence in terms of supercar looks. But it's a close call. I mean, what do you prefer, the Integrale or the Emira on out and out looks? So coming to the front sides of the cars, I mean, isn't it two amazing, beautiful, stunning, sexy, alluring cars with two completely different looks, being the colour red? I mean, you couldn't make it up. So yeah, looks is subjective. Which one do you prefer? To me, it's a killer question. I just can't answer this question. I think the Emira is one of the prettiest cars ever made, not just the prettiest sports car ever made, and there's supercars that can't match it in prettiness. Integrale just has menace, old school charm, allure, charisma to it that makes you wilt and dribble. But that's just me. The seats in the Integrale are pretty old school Recaros, but beautifully sculptured, incredibly supportive, very firm. It looks like they're padded, but it's very minimal padding. Now what it does mean is that you actually feel everything that the car throws at you, which is of course a positive in ultimate sports car feel terms. Look wise, I think I prefer the looks of the Emiras. They just look more contemporary, and I have a preference for Alcantara. Now if these were the Alcantara Evolution 2 seats, then I'd probably have gone with these. There's adjustments for rake on this seat down here. It's got adjustment down here for slide control. So all in all, they are adjustable. It does the job. There's no lumbar support adjustment, but it doesn't need it. As you can see here, it's got plenty of support in that area, so you really feel you're part of the seat, one with the seat. Now inside the Emira, the seats look more contemporary. They look like they're going to be more comfortable, and indeed they are more comfortable. Lotus done a reasonable job. Some people complained about them. I think they're brilliant. They've got ultimate in adjustment technology, even lumbar support, which is electrically adjusted. It's got memory seats as well. I think the seats are a big plus for this car personally. And the Alcantara here, it's got leather here on the side, and it's matched on the dash with leather here, Alcantara here, Alcantara leather there. So it's a real mix of the two materials, but with the Alcantara on the back, it holds you in place better, which we'll come to a bit later. Right, the steering wheel. Now, this isn't an original Integrale steering wheel. They came with either quite boring looking thing with three sections, or the Momo course wheel, which was an Evo 2 I had on the Giallo back in 2000 to 2002. This is actually a replacement steering wheel. It's got the old bath sign in it. Tongue works. And it's beautiful. It's called a deep dish one, so it comes at you, so you feel you're more on the steering wheel, which is actually better, arguably, pound for pound, than a steering wheel which is further away. It's down to personal preference. Really works in this car. It is fit for the car, because this is actually a Lancia 037, which is the nuts of a Lancia rally car. It also feels very comfortable. It's got the Alcantara. It is worn away a lot, but it still has that beautiful sort of touch that leather just can't give. It's also warmer in colder climates, whereas leather is really cold once you get into a car, for sure. Looks wise, I prefer this steering wheel to the Emiras. If only that it's just old school. It's got metal, it's slim. The Emira steering wheel is quite uncomfortable due to the width of it. It's about that. I mean, that's a huge difference. So all in all, this steering wheel definitely wins. It's got no complications going on. Flipping love it, actually. The steering wheel, now, I don't know. I don't mind it personally, and I have no issue whatsoever with the shape, with the straight and the straight there, and the curve only around this bit. That's a non-issue to me. And take that, and if it was centralised and it hadn't have all this haptic control modern nonsense on it, this would be a fine steering wheel. It just can't compete with the one in the Integrale, because that one's got an old school steering wheel with no airbag, a lot svelter, no technology to distract you, and also it feels better. This one's Alcantara and feels beautiful, beautiful, beautiful to the touch. Honestly, it's so sensuous. And obviously 4,500 miles, it's still there and it's still lovely. But it's really thick around here, as I mentioned in the Integrale, and actually that's somewhat uncomfortable. And even if you're holding it there, it's still quite thick, and you really got to get your fingers around it, and it's not ideal. But it is doable, and I can't say it's been a massive issue over the 4,500 miles that I've been driving this car. Now, adjustment wise, this does slightly win it. Obviously the seats ultimately adjustable, including lumbar, with the memory, and even the steering wheel moves back and forwards, up and down, so you can really get into the good driving position. Whereas the Integrale, as just mentioned, it's got the seat adjustment at its base level. That is it, and the steering wheel does not move. Instrument wise, well, this is where it completely smashes the Lotus Emira, in that it's just a sight to behold. It's a thing of beauty. It's a simplistic technological masterpiece with the old proper Veglia instruments. I mean, just bloody gorgeous. The yellow on black is stunning. It's got so much going on. It's got 5 or 6 lights there, 6 lights there, 8 lights there, lights going on around the car. Instrument wise, I'll start it up. You've got the TFT screen here and the TFT screen here. That's what people are used to now. It's what they expect, and to be honest, they work really well. Everything's easy to get to. Heating, sat nav, media, connectivity. You can muck around with what shows on there, all there, mix and match it, etc. Different looks with different sport modes. So all in all, yeah, great TFT. But I just still fancy, by some margin, the Integrale's cool multiple dial setup. It just feels special as soon as you sit inside it. Do you ever look at it when you're driving? Nah, not really. Only the speedo, and that's a nightmare because it's in kilometres an hour, so you've got to make an adjustment in your head anyway. So overall, yeah, I still have the complete binnacle assembly and dials in the Integrale over this, but I do say that as a modern example, this actually is very good. Technology. Well, this car's got ABS, but we're talking about the inside of the car. But there's enough here to tell you what's going on with the car. Okay, don't get a kind of a beep and a digital worded message come up to exactly what's wrong with the car, but you can see at a glance if there's anything wrong. You can usually, with this car, because it's old school, feel it anyway or hear it. So technology, don't need it. It hasn't got a stereo. Who wants a stereo? It's got bloody speakers. No idea why. Must have had a stereo in the past, because they're certainly not standard. No aircon, rudimentary controls. The fan is complete waste of time. It goes from to I mean, it's like completely rubbish aircon. Some completely rubbish heating system. 3 choices for where it points at you. And even at full blast with the heat in the winter, there's not a lot that comes out in terms of heat. However, such heat from the engine itself in front of you, that it's actually warm and toasty in the car. No technology to speak of, nothing like sat-navs, Bluetooth, oh dear. But when you're in a car of this ilk, they're just distractions. I don't want a tablet here and digital LCD screens here. I don't want all that. This suits me just fine, and instrument-wise, I think this overall, including technology, smashes the Emira just for that simplicity and that kudos. So I talk about technology in the Emira. Obviously it completely slaughters the Integrale, as you'd expect. This has got KEF stereo system, which has got a bit better with age. Not as good as I'd hoped it would be, but it's still good. Obviously there's no stereo at all in the Integrale, so it obviously wins on that one. It's got built-in sat-nav. You can use the integration with your iPhone or your Android for Google guidance, which is absolutely fine. DB radio, so that hasn't got anything, as I said before. And the technology obviously goes into the cruise control and this TFT setup, as I've just mentioned, along with the technology used in the seats for ultimate control, memory, lumbar, all sorts of electricity, climate control. That's a real boon. I missed that in there, hasn't got it. Basically the car's hot or it's warm. Pedals, well, I think it's quite a bit of distance there. You can see between the brake, talking about heel and toe. So clutch, you know, you've got to kind of come at an angle, which is not unusual, to be fair. But other than that, they're fine. I always drive in driving shoes in this and the Lotus anyway, and you've got space over here to rest your foot, which is the most important thing in my book. So clutch pedal, you can see the clutch squeaks. I can put a bit of oil on there. It doesn't take long to wear off though. I need to put some proper lube on it actually. But dual pedal there, rubbers on top of those ones. All works absolutely fine. There's not bad room, but it would be a little bit more confined with like work shoes on. Pedals, now I'll talk about it when I'm driving along, but it's a tight box, not between the clutch and the brake, and it's got the side pedal thankfully, but you can see that the accelerator and the pedal are closer together. Now, as I say, when I'm driving along I'll get to it in better detail, but it's probably better for some people, worse for others. Oh, it's funny, yeah, driving along in this car, the looks and appreciation you get and the attention is amazing. In terms of attention, the Integrale and the Lancia are similar, but more people like to come up to you and talk to you in the Integrale. It's a car with such kudos and history. Now the Emira stands out at first glance more, it just looks like a supercar and it's red. But then they might look away after looking at it and think that's a pretty car. With this car, they might not notice it straight away. When they notice it, they really notice it, stop, look behind them, and they'll try to talk to you if they can, or give you a thumbs up, okay sign, nod of approval, even they scream out. So in terms of kudos and just your sense of your ego ship when you're driving this car is immense, because you just feel like a driving god driving this, even if you're a poor driver.
Never seen Integrale anywhere.
No, they're very, very rare. Just do some filming on it. Make sure you check out my channel.
Oh, definitely.
So let's talk about the chassis and suspension. Now first up, what was it? Whoa, wicked! Well, that bend, car just goes down flat. I mean, I've been in a lot of road cars, but it's hard to believe that any road car could have better road holding abilities than these two cars. Unbelievable. Whoa. I mean, the power out of the bend and the power in through the bend is quite unfathoming actually. It's ridiculous. And that's down to the chassis and the suspension. Now obviously the chassis and suspension on the Emira, coming somewhat from the Exige Evora, are already tried and tested anyway. But on a modern car, of course, obviously brand new, it's quite tight until you put some miles on it. And then it really is a fantastic car. I've driven the Emira a couple of times around the track and it's unbelievable. And to quote a McLaren and Lotus test driver who was there one day, who went out in it and went and drove my car, they said it's a step above the Exige and up there with all but the very best McLarens, which is praise indeed for the Emira. Now this has Öhlins suspension, which is uprated. And Öhlins are known to be possibly one of the best suspensions you can get before you get into the really bespoke, low quality, low volume specialist makers. And it's an absolute delight. And again, you can feel everything that's going on, but just a little bit more than you can with the Lotus. The chassis certainly feels everything, and they're both firm cars. They're really not for your granny or your mum or your wife if she's sensitive to this sort of thing and prefers the comfort as mine do of a Bentley. But for someone who's a sports driver, the connection is fantastic. You really do feel every single thing. The downside is, if I go over one now, ooh, hear that? The banks and crushes are quite disturbing on both cars when you go over a pothole, a drain cover or some other depression in the road. So yeah, that's the negative part of it, but the positive is the feedback's exceptional. It's probably got no place in being in this comparison. I'm just talking about comfort. Of course, this has got more comfort in the back seats because the Emira hasn't got back seats. So let's give the win to this one, and overall comfort. The seats on the Emira are more comfortable. These are a lot firmer with small padding, as I talked about a bit earlier. These hug you a bit better. So at fast cornering speeds, you just feel you've got more body positioning on this, so you don't have to work so hard on the steering wheel with all your muscles up here. It's a little bit more natural, but I confess, you know, it is pretty close. The actual seating position, okay, this is where the Integrale slightly wins. Not that the Emira's is bad, but you slightly sit up in the Emira, you feel like the car should be about 2 inches lower in a sitting position to give it more of authentic supercar experience. But actual, when you're driving along, just due to the position of this and the visibility you've got around this Integrale, it has to win on seating position. Right, actual steering. Now, the steering in Emira is as good as I've ever come across in a car. You know, it's top-end Porsche-like to me, and completely beats other cars of that are sports cars or older supercars, or newer supercars, because they have less feel. So, Integrale steering, it seems pretty normal. It's pretty direct and go-karty. You don't have to move it a lot to make a movement with the wheels. But there's not a huge amount of feel at low speeds. But it seems to not just go linear like most cars and the Emira, it goes exponentially good. And the feeling and the weighting in the steering wheel gets exponentially better as you put on more speed or take more speed around a bend. Now that's quite interesting, because at the end of the day, this car is about that last 25% for mere mortals, or that last 15 to 10% for professional drivers, when they can really extricate the difference of why this particular car, the Integrale, is so very, very special. I can't get the most out of it, but occasionally I'll spike into that top 20 or 15% on something that I'm doing on the road. It might have been I've got into a bend too fast, panic, and hold on for grim life. The car just goes woof right round it without any dramas. I go, oh right, yeah, I forgot. This Integrale is much better than I am. Oh, rough bit of road there. Chassis still soaks it up. It doesn't nook the steering wheel out your hands, which is a huge positive. You've probably been in cars that are firm, and it kind of nooks the steering wheel out your hands or nooks the car across the road. That doesn't happen, so that is a positive for the suspension. Now the actual gears, the Emira gears got a bit of stick on early door testing and ownership, because people thought it was a bit notchy and blocky. However, I love that. It's like Ferrari gated gears. It goes where it should go, and you get that kind of it's actually really, really rewarding. I don't want a fluffy gearbox that's light and sugary and liquidy and just kind of goes blah, 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 blah. No, I can do one. I much prefer a gearbox that goes chink, chink, chink and makes a noise that does it. So the Emira wins on that. Obviously, they're more modern gears that operate in a perfect way, whereas this Integrale, the gears, are a bit wishy-washy. It doesn't help that this hasn't got the short shifter. I had that on my other Integrale and it was brilliant. Literally go ching, ching, ching. This one goes like out there, out here, out here. And it's quite a reach for the 3rd and 5th gear. They're pushing it right out to the right. So gear changing wise, the Integrale falls behind the Emira. However, I will say I've never missed a gear once in the Integrale, and I've missed a couple of gears, certainly in anger in the Emira. But I still overall say the Emira does take that laurel. Right, talked about the pedals and how they look in the actual floor, and driving along, it's really close. You'd think Italian Ferrari. I think an Italian car would have diabolical pedal setup. Actually, this isn't too bad. Okay, it's slightly offset. The centre pedal is, looking at it now, a couple of inches to the right of the central steering column. So it's an absolute non-issue. And I find the pedals very good. They're quite high up, so it's uncomfortable to rest your foot over the brake and clutch pedal. Oh, they shouldn't really do that. So I do find in the Integrale particularly, I always have my left foot resting on the left, and I don't like to hover over it. And that squeak's bloody annoying as well. That can be sorted. Right, a bit on the chassis and suspension is the balance. The balance of the car at speed. You can fit on the Integrale. You can feel it starting to go into that 4-wheel torque mode, where you can feel that there's something going on with the 4 wheels. That's extremely bloody clever. I think it's quite a simple system, but my God, it does an effective job. And it feels different. It just seems to work as one. I can't really explain it, but when you're going around a bend at speed, it's like the car works to get you around that bend even better than you thought was possible. It's really hard to explain it. I'll see if I can come up with an analogy. Okay, so the Golf R and the RS3, as an example, being powerful hatchbacks, they kind of fight their way to get that best grip around that bend and allow that traction to take you through the bend fast and come out of it well. In Integrale, the word fighting doesn't seem to come into your mindset. It's that it's an orchestrated, cohesive, one set up piece of magical machinery that just makes it happen, and it just seems like it's more balanced going through that bend. Or traction. Yeah, that's an interesting one. You'd think that the Integrale would smash it, and at speed, of course, in the wet, this car would destroy the Emira. However, on normal road surfaces, and I don't drive my cars in the wet if I can help it. The Emira will get caught out in it. I drive that in the wet, sorry. I don't drive it in anger in the wet. It's no point. And I never take the Integrale out into the wet for obvious reasons. But the traction on the Lotus is absolutely godly. Even in my test drive, had it as a sports suspension, put it in sports, give it some beans, and it's difficult to get the back end out in the wet unless you're an absolute hooligan. So it gives you huge confidence to still take great speeds into a bend in the Emira. In Integrale, it's just good full stop in any condition. But funnily enough, you do feel as if there's a little bit of wheel movement or going in on the wheels as you're going around the bend. But as I talked about on the chassis and balance, bloody brilliant that was, wasn't it? That it all feels as one. Now obviously, being rear-wheel drive, the Emira hasn't got inherent 4-wheel traction, it's just got good traction. And but it seems to stay sticky for a lot longer. If you did break the traction, you've just got to be in the right mindset to control it. Right, finesse. I think you've got to give finesse to the Emira at every single speed and every single bend at speed. It really just seems to work, and work in a beautiful orchestrated way when you take into account the speed, the acceleration, the torque, the delivery of the power, the steering and the chassis all in one. It's just a more modern car. Whereas the Integrale, you feel you've got to work at getting all those components to come together. Yes, the components by themselves are exceptional, but you've got to work at bringing it together to maximise the car. So the Lotus has more finesse. Now, however, and you're probably thinking this as I'm saying it, when a car's got too much finesse, like an M4 for example, or modern supercars, it's kind of a bit of a what's the point? What is the point? Because you feel like you're less driving it and the car's driving you. You just happen to be behind the wheel. And the technology is just making your job a lot easier. So you could argue that it's a negative, and that the more positive driving experience to be had by this Integrale. Right, last but not least, and this is probably the main word, the main one word when I come to talking and experiencing fantastic drivers and sports cars, and that one word is feel. It's a double meaning name, because feel is how it makes you feel, and feel is how the car feels. So there's actually two ways of looking at it, and they're both related. How this car makes me feel beats the Emira hands down. It starts when I walk away or walk up to the car. It accentuates when I get inside the car. It gets even more when I start the car, and it kind of climaxes when I'm driving the car. This car has feel oozing out of its every pore. Now, the Emira has incredible feel out of every pore, but it just gets beaten by this. I think that's just the organic, old school nature, the mechanical nature of the Integrale that just makes it feel more special. How does it make me feel? It makes me feel top of the world. The Emira makes me feel good. It's a rare car, and you feel really good driving it. But you feel even better driving this. It's like driving an old Lamborghini, an old Ferrari. The new cars can't match it. It's just much case of more. Look how much money I've got, and I bought an expensive Ferrari or Lamborghini. If it's an older Ferrari or Lamborghini, it comes down, people look at you in a different light, and you feel that as a driver. So in summary, overall, it doesn't surprise me, because I love both cars, they're both mine, but I have an overall biasness to the car that I dreamed about when I was younger, and the win has to go to the Integrale. When you add up the factors and the scores, as I talk about both the cars, I think it actually does make sense that for me, as an 80 to 90 grand manual car with amazing kudos and looks and performance, the Integrale does in fact take it. But to come that close just shows you how far Lotus have come with that Lotus Emira. It's still very alluring, it's sexy and beautiful, whereas this one's kind of has inbuilt passion and menacing starts and aggression. It's a close call, and I'll just go the Integrale. I don't know what your thoughts are. It'd be interesting to see. Put what your thoughts are and what your age is, because then it'll be indicative to me. Is it true that younger generation will just instantly knee-jerk go for that Lotus Emira? Can't blame them. Or will they in fact go for the Integrale and understand how special this car is? Right, well that's it. I'll be signing out there. Let me know your thoughts. Please drop a like, a comment. Make sure you subscribe for more content about these two cars and more cars to come. Drive safe, keep safe. Aid out.